So I'm going to continue, and I'm going to point out where I'm going to do some little detail work. Now, this is the photo reference, and there's some really subtle patterns and skin differences on the bottom of this apple. And so I'm going to pick a few of those little lighter patterns against the darker skin color, and I'm going to focus on that right now. So if you can see my photo reference, and then you can compare it to my painting, you'll be able to see the transfer information right in that area. All right. So again, I'm going to set my painting aside. My phone's going crazy. I'm going to bring my photo reference with the acetate on top of it now, and I'm going to now reach up and I'm going to start to mix a little bit of a lighter, warmer green color that will be the skin of the apple. So that will be the skin color, and I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to clean this brush. So I just cleaned my brush. It was that darker reflected shadow color in the side of on the shadow side of the apple. I'm going to clean that off really good, so I'm mixing nice clean color. Okay, and I'm drying the bristles as good as I can. And now I'm going to mix right off to the side of that. I'm going to start with a yellow color. And then I'm going to add a little bit of green to it. I know it's going to be kind of light, so I'm going to touch a little bit of white in there. These colors, this is cad yellow light and cad yellow medium. So I'm going to lighten that value. When I mix white into that color, not only does it cool it, the temperature, but it also desaturates. Okay, so I think I'm pretty close with the skin color and then the lighter skin patterns. They're really subtle and really small. Haven't touched liquid yet. I'm going to reach over off screen and I'm just going to barely touch a little bit of liquid to add and mix in with that paint. Okay, pretty close there. And I didn't put any liquid in this pool of paint either. So I just mixed a little bit of liquid in with that paint as well. All right, so now I'm going to hold it right here, and I'm going to, what this color is the skin color. And I'm going to paint that on there, and it's about the right, it's a little bit light, and it's a little bit too green, and so I'm going to grab a little bit of yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is a little bit more neutral. And then I'm going to grab just a little bit of that shadow color that I had mixed up before, and I'm going to mix that in together. Now, when you're doing small detail work like this, it doesn't take very much paint. I'm not going to mix a huge big pool of paint like I did when I was working on this area over in here. But this is just little tiny areas, and so I'm just going to work pretty small. Okay, So I'm going to mix up into this area and see where we're at. All right, so if you look at that brush stroke, it's still light and it's still too green. So I'm actually going to grab a little bit of brown. And I know it's hard for you guys to see from this video, but you're going to have to trust me, but this is how much time and effort it takes to get these little teeny details and to copy a photo and to discipline yourself. I know I've used that word several times. Now, I've added quite a bit of paint to my pool without using liquid, so I just reached over and grabbed a little bit of liquid. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to go right next to it. Okay, so now I'm getting a little bit closer. You can see those 3 brush strokes that I've made on there, and I'm getting a little bit closer. It's still a little bit light. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin off and I'm going to mix a little bit darker color up off of that main pool of color that I've mixed. So I'm not trying to affect this whole big pool right here. I'm just going to spin off like I did over here, and I'm going to get a little bit more accurate. Okay, mix that up. Now I'm going to put right next to it. Okay, so I just put that brush stroke right next to the other 3 that I've done, and now I'm getting really close. Okay, so what I'm thinking is that when I look at my photo reference, there's the skin color, and then there's these lighter ellipses or ovals of the skin pattern that are just barely lighter, and so I'm thinking that they're going to be a little bit closer to the other colors that I mixed down there. All right, so I'm going to add just a little bit more yellow to that color and a little bit more of that raw sienna, that brown color. I'm going to reach over and grab just a little bit more shadow color, a little bit more darker green, neutral green that I mixed up earlier to get that shadow color. Grab just a touch of liquid, and I'm going to put it right next to it, and there it is. There's the color. I can't, when I paint on top of the photocopy or the photo reference with the acetate, and I made that brush stroke, I can't even tell the difference. Okay, now you'll probably see a little bit of difference, but it's because it's shiny. But from my end, it's really close. So I just cleaned that off. I'm going to set the acetate aside. I'm going to grab my painting, and I'm now going to start painting. Now I'm going to show you again up close. You'll be able to see the transfer information right there at the bottom end of the apple, and that's where I'm going to paint around, and then I'm going to bring those lighter patterns into it and blend. All right, so I'm going to start painting around those transfer information or transfer lines are very subtle, and so I'm going to paint around there, and then I'll get the skin patterns on there, and then I'll blend them. And I have my photo reference right here next to me, and every time I make a brush stroke, I'm going to be looking very carefully at my reference. So I'm going around those really important skin patterns or skin textures with the kind of a greenish, brownish skin color of the green apple. I'm going to reload my brush. Now, even though I'm working in a really small area, I'm going to use that round pointed blending brush as I get the two colors put together. And again, it's a smaller area, so I don't want to go too far because I know I'm going to have to mix up some other colors here in a second to be very accurate. All right, so there's that part. And now I'm going to come back in with a little bit of lighter pattern color. And I know that that's going to be too light because I thought this was really accurate and I ended up going way darker and more desaturated and more red-brown than I thought it was. So I'm going to come back in and take some of that lighter color that I mixed up right there and I'm going to blend that together. So now I'm going to come over and I'm going to, now this is a size 6. And I'm checking my reference. And I'm going to add it. And I'm going to paint it on top of those transfer marks. And I'm being very careful not to go too far out of those lines. And it's opaque enough paint. Remember, I just barely touched the liquid. And so that paint is opaque enough that it's going to cover the transfer lines, but it's not so thick that it leaves brush marks. All right, so that's a little green. So I'm going to add just a little bit of Cad Yellow Medium and just a touch of Cad Red Light. And now what that color is going to make, what does yellow and red make? It makes orange. And those skin patterns that I'm now mixing up, now I know you can't see this, but from my end, as I'm mixing this, it's the exact same value of what I just mixed up, but now it's a warmer temperature. So those little fine details is exactly what's going to make this painting look like the photograph instead of an indicative painting. So I'm going to paint those onto there, and I'm painting wet into wet, and those colors are going to mix. Okay, that's a little bit lighter, so I'm going to mix just a little bit lighter in there. And it's just, for me, it's just really fun to really dial those little details in. Okay, I know you can't see this because I'm working at such a small scale, but I'm going to hold that up and you'll be able to see all those nice little light, warm skin patterns that I'm painting in there. And you should be able to not see the transfer lines anymore. Okay? Now, I haven't even done any blending yet. I'm going to put that detail brush down with those lighter colors, and I'm going to come back in with the with the darker skin color, and I'm going to drift over. I just lightened it up just a little bit, and then I'm going to drift over into this other area, making some variations and blending wet into wet now, because I'm going up against those little details patterns that I just painted in. And now I'm going to mix those two pools together to get some variations going on. Now, an important note to take right now is that this part of the painting up here is still wet from the blend that I did earlier. And all of this area down here is not wet. And so I'm actually resting my hand on the painting. Now, if I had started down in here, I couldn't do that. I'd have to keep my hand up off of the painting. But because I started up in this area and I'm moving down, I can rest my hand on the painting. Okay, so if I hadn't have thought that through, that would be a problem, because all of my, if I had painted down in here, it would be all over my hand and I'd be smearing it and it'd be a mess right now. So I'm really trying to figure out where to paint and where to rest my hand and where to work. All right. Okay, so I'm going to leave that right there. Now, there is a really nice large landmark skin pattern right here. Hold that up and get it over to where you can see it, right in this area. And I'm going to paint that out now. I'm going to paint that awesome little skin pattern in there. And it's pretty light, but it's pretty warm. And by the time I get done painting on that, you're not going to be able to see the transfer line. All you'll be able to see is the lighter skin pattern. And then I'm really checking my reference at this point, and that is split. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to split it with that really subtle skin color that I just mixed up. Okay, and again, you're going to notice that I haven't touched my blending brushes yet, but I am just here in a second. Okay, and I'm going to have to go back and forth. To get the right shape and positioning and cover up the transfer line. And I'm going to just lightly blend out some of that area. All right, so I'm going to hold that up. You're going to be able to see the difference. And then to get really fine-tuned, I'm going to take my dry, round, pointed blending brush, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to just lightly start to blend all of those colors together, because they're not hard edges, they're soft edges. And that's what I'm going to start to blend out right now. And I'm going to be very subtle with it. Again, the pressure on the paintbrush or the blending brush right now is very, very light. And that is starting to look a little bit more like the photo reference. And that will conclude how to paint small details. And it's by using small brushes, multiple colors, multiple values, then using smaller blending brushes to blend the edges together.